All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's March 31st, 2021. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the CEO and founder of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator, and that means that we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it together with your team while showing them the ropes. If that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, the format is very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. So feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in and participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by heading over to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. We host these calls every week. We'll automatically post a video recording of this session to our YouTube channel. And if you enjoy the content and want to support this channel, please hit us up and hit those subscribe and like buttons. It helps out a great deal. So we'll follow up with an email that you can share with your team. And with that said, let's kick it off. So just a few announcements for this week. One is I alluded to that this tutorial for Atmos would be live. It is live now. You can run through this and understand kind of how to interact with the Atmos client that we use in all of our engagements. It is a fresh take at how to work with Terraform using our opinionated YAML stack configuration that Atmos is a client for operating on. We also support, of course, Spacelift and Terraform Cloud as other interfaces to the YAML stack configuration that we've defined. This tutorial is by Matt Gowie, regular of SweetOps. He spent a great bit of time putting it together, so we welcome your feedback. Corresponding with this is the Cloud Posse tutorials repo, and here's the first tutorial kind of running through an example with Atmos to get started using this documentation here. Cool. Any questions on that?
I look forward to using it.
Wow, you are early adopter. So I appreciate it. Any feedback you have. Obviously, there's a lot not documented there. It was pointed out like we didn't document how you can use it to generate a Terraform state backend, which is one of the ways that we use it as well. All right, next announcement is for a couple Terraform modules. We did merge these this past week, so our Terraform modules for Cloudflare Zones are now live, and it supports defining all your page rules, health checks, to name a few things. And in addition to that, we also deployed the Cloudflare WAF rule sets modules. I realized that I think we forgot to publish them in the registry, so we got to go do that. Andy, give me a reminder. And the WAF rule sets also supports a more verbose than I would like definition for rule sets. It's just that there's so much you got to express. And the reason also why we, of course, use this format is that it plays very well with our stack configurations, so that we can keep the architecture outside of the module and allow the module just to provision the infra. All right. So right on cue, HashiCorp has announced 0.15 RC1. So we're getting very close to the final version 0.15 to be released. Excited about that. As a reminder, this is supposed to be the last 0.x release for Terraform before they go GA with, or not GA, but like V1. Anybody have any good stories or bad stories testing 0.15 yet?
Hey, one quick thing to add. I've actually set up linting on Terraform 14 code bases using Terraform 15, and everything's working pretty good. Haven't seen any problems there.
Oh, okay, that's good. Hopefully it's minimal impacts. I was worried you were going to say something else.
Well, I did notice that there are slight differences between 13, 14, and 15 in the Terraform format command. So
Yes.
if you're using one for your linting or in like a CICD pipeline or something like that, make sure you're using the same version on your local machine that you're using on in CICD, or else you'll be constantly chasing your tail on that one.
Yeah, basically they changed the white space rules for Terraform format.
Yeah, and there's even, I think it's even right on this, if you scroll down a little bit on the bug fixes, there's even one here, that one right there, 28202. The format, Terraform format does something different when it has multi-line strings now too, that it didn't do in an older version. So yeah, so
That's a good point.
yeah, so anyway,
Yeah.
just be careful.
Yeah, I should comment specifically. I'm only running the validate step from Terraform 15 on Terraform 14 code base.
Yeah, so what Cloud Posse is doing on all our modules is we also quote unquote validate, the formatting, but not using the validate command. So we basically run format, see if it errors, exits non-zero, indicating changes, and then we fail the build if the code is not formatted. So this kind of thing screws us up when they do that. So we're going to see a lot of failed builds in the Cloud Posse ecosystem. All right, what else? Let's see here. I'm just curious. Packages, pull requests. So we update these at least once a day automatically. And let's see if our Terraform one has hit already. Terraform 0.15. No, we haven't picked up the new release, so that'll come up automatically tonight when the GitHub action runs again. All right. So yeah, and the last one is just a friendly reminder. If you haven't already gone ahead and sponsored Cloud Posse, we really appreciate your small contributions. It shows you care. We have very affordable sponsorship tiers at any level, starting at $1 a month and then $10 a month. So if you haven't already, do head over and sponsor us if it's something you're eligible or capable of doing. I appreciate it. And talking points. All right, so I only have 2 questions queued up from the Office Hours Slack channel. Gonna bring over my Slack here, and then let's start talking about these questions. Give me a second. There we go. All right, so the first question is from David Lozano. He asks, he's curious to hear our opinion and experiences using GitHub and GitHubActions versus using AWS CodeBuild, CodePipeline, and CodeDeploy for CI/CD pipelines when the source is stored in GitHub, e.g. versus code commit, and deploying to ECS. So yeah, I think this is an interesting one to get everyone's take on. Here's my take on it. I'll set up my experience. So, Cloud Posse, we have Terraform modules for CodeBuild and CodePipeline, and I think we have it for CodeDeploy too. And actually, yeah, we also have it for CodeDeploy. And my experience using CodeBuild and CodePipeline, what's good about it, all terraformed, all nicely integrated into your infrastructure, end-to-end automation with that, tightly integrated with IAM. But my experience using it feels very antiquated to any of the other modern CI/CD build systems, and especially GitHub Actions. Like, what's beautiful with GitHub Actions is you don't need to terraform your GitHub Actions. You literally drop a workflow file in a directory. You don't even need to set up the triggers, any integrations, anything. It just works magically. And when you start working then with CodeBuild and CodePipeline, it's like you're whipping out your bazooka with Terraform and gonna build some pipelines, and Yeah. It's cool if you got it automated, and it's cool if that's what your team understands, I guess, but it doesn't feel very modern. We use GitHubActions with ECS now. We recently did an engagement related to this. I really am excited about the way we went about it. So how we went about doing deployments with GitHubActions and Terraform / ECS is we split them in two parts. So we treat the CI and the build as one part, and then we treat the deployment as a second part. So true continuous deployment or delivery. So what we're doing as part of the CI is, GitHub action wakes up and it runs the Docker build and it pushes that to ECR. If you're using GitHub Actions, you're really going to want to use the self-hosted runners so that those can deploy in your environment. They can use instance profiles, or if you're using EKS, you can use the GitHub Actions controller by Summerwind, and that one supports using IAM service account roles. It also supports scaling down to 0 and scaling out. It's pretty cool. But when you have that, now it's very easy to push your images to ECR. You still have pretty tight integration with AWS since you can use the IAM roles. You can have multiple pools of workers depending on what permissions you want to give to them. And the GitHub Actions user experience is better than something like CodeBuild and CodePipeline, in my opinion. Now, you have other tools like CodeFresh, which I think have a little bit more polished UI. You can see what the state is of all of your builds and deployments in CodeFresh from one pane of glass versus GitHub Actions. There is no single pane of glass that I'm aware of to see your builds across your 300 repositories like Cloud Posse has. So it's an exercise in clicking then again on the Actions tab and then finding the action that ran and all that. So that kind of sucks from the UX perspective of GitHub Actions. Then from the deployment side, what we're doing is basically the GitHub action is just writing to a repo what we want to deploy. And then we have another thing that runs. In this case, we're using a tool called Spacelift. We've talked about in the past. Spacelift will then see the changes in the Git repo and automatically deploy them. So we're using Spacelift like it's Argo CD. It just synchronizes what's in this repo with what we want in AWS. All right, so I'm going to pause there. Happy to answer any questions on that, but also turn it over to anybody else who wants to talk about their. Anybody love using CodeBuild and CodePipeline? I'd like to hear from you. I think that'd be really cool. Maybe Marcin? What are your thoughts? Do you like CodeBuild, CodePipeline?
Not at all.
Okay.
I've been working with a few clients that used it because they embraced the cloud native way and they wanted to be all on AWS. And for some products, it just doesn't make sense. And CICD is one of the products. GitHub or GitLab actions, like the pipelines there, are really, really good at this point. And using slow, hard to configure and expensive sometimes CI/CD products from AWS, not really the best option there.
I've had the exact same experience.
Okay.
You know, people who are senior solution architects have drunk the AWS Kool-Aid, and just if it's available on AWS, I want you to use it. Regardless of how good it is and whatever else. And it's usually not a good approach.
Yeah. And God, if you're using like AWS code commit too or something, I can't stand using code commit as a source control system.
I've heard it's gotten better. It certainly couldn't have gotten any worse because it was bad.
Yeah. Maybe that's. To be honest, I have not looked at code commit for 2 years, so.
I actually like CodeBuild for one very specific use case.
Okay.
So AWS actually has a GitHub action to trigger a CodeBuild job, I guess. And that's awesome because you can get a bunch of resources up to 72 virtual CPUs and 250 gigs of RAM, which if you want to do some really intense testing really, really, really fast, it's a very good option.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that's cool. I've seen that action. AWS, wait, GitHub action AWS code build.
Yeah, that should be the first result. Also,
Yeah.
CodePipeline has some nice integrations and CodeDeploy with some native AWS services like ECS and things like that. So it might make sense for certain things.
And this is also just a good
Maybe.
repo to check out if you are using GitHub Actions. Is the AWS Actions? I think it's by AWS here, so it's actually verified. So they're publishing some useful things, and here's the one that you're going to use automatically if you're pushing to ECR or anything. You're going to use these two, and then the one that you were just talking about, the code build one, this one here. That's pretty cool.
And if I could piggyback on that, I do like the integrations that CodeBuild, CodeDeploy, CodePipeline give you with AWS services, but it's the visibility problem I think that gets difficult for the casual user, because if you go into a CodeDeploy console or a CodeBuild console, it's really hard to figure out what's happening where. And that can be a drawback for your developer experience, your engineer
Yeah.
experience. So that's kind of the bummer there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, and that was like the benefit with GitLab pipelines and now GitHub Actions, is that when you're developing, it's just so nice to be able to, like, if you're already using GitHub, it is so nice just to see all your builds in one place. You don't need to log into another UI, and the integration is just so much tighter.
And this is not something that is on GitHub. That's on the other providers. Circle CI has a GitHub app, and they could have published the Circle CI logs in the GitHub checks page. Like, they could have done that. They did not want to do that. Brigade does exactly that. So there is support for it. Them insisting not to implement them is annoying.
Baffling to me, yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you're talking about the status check API, right?
The checks API, yeah.
Yeah, the checks API and the deployments API. So this stuff here is what gives external CI or CD systems better integration with GitHub. Yeah, and CodeBuild and CodePipeline, they don't natively integrate with this, right? To this day?
I
No,
think
I don't
they
think
do.
so.
Oh, they do?
But no, I'm not talking about those checks down there. I'm talking about genuine checks. The checks API is different from the status reporting API. The checks API gives you a tab where,
Oh, this one here, yeah.
yeah, that one. And in here, instead of seeing that GitHub icon and select a check to view from sidebar, an GitHub integration, a GitHub app could do that. Circle CI has a GitHub app. They could paste the logs here. Again, Brigade does that. And if you give me a couple of minutes, I am actually gonna find an example.
Cool. Well, that's a good point. Thanks for bringing that up, Len. Any other input?
Yes, actually we like it CodeBuild because we mostly do Java and Angular stuff, and these things get built on low-end machines, and so we offload the builds towards CodeBuild, and so the developers don't have any issues with that because they just send it to CodeBuild and they do their stuff. So for the output of the builds, we catch the ID that is stored in the S3 bucket. We pull down the log file, and okay, when the build fails, the log file is on the machine where the build has started, and so it's visible. It's a text file, so that works.
Okay. And you're using that without any integration with GitHub Actions, or you're using that with GitHub Actions?
Not with GitHub Actions, with GitLab. So
GitLab. Okay.
The stupid thing there is they don't have any integration at all with CodeBuild. So you need to zip up your code and ship it to an S3 bucket, and then CodeBuild pulls it in, does the build, and then stores it in another S3 bucket. But it works. It's not elegant. It's not very fast, but it works.
Did you consider just using the GitLab runners on-prem?
Yes, we do.
And was there a reason to use one or the other?
Well, the thing is that CodeBuild is a bit cheaper because you don't need to run a full GitLab instance on your on-premise. So you can start up a build at once when you want it. And okay, when you pull down the log file of the build and it fails, then the developer sees, okay, my build has failed, and that's why, and it's manageable. It's not very intelligent and efficient, but it works.
Yeah. Though, and okay, and then on that note, I mean, just another thing on integration is it's really nice when you're all here and you can see the streaming logs in real time
Correct.
within the UI, like of GitLab or GitHubActions. Yeah.
Correct. That's not how it
And you
works
use
with
that.
GitLab, but yeah.
Well, so Vlad, when you're using the CodeBuild GitHub action, what kind of streaming are you getting out of that?
That's a good question. I think it was just success and error. I remember it giving you back the job ID or something.
Yeah, but it's not like a real-time stream from the console of the job or anything, right?
Well, as far as I know, no, they didn't have that, but it's been a while since I've used it. It might have changed. I doubt it, but there's a
Especially when you have
possibility.
like a long-running thing, you know, it's like, okay, it's an hour and a half in. Is this thing working? Is this thing on? No output? That can be frustrating. All right, let's see what else. Next question then. So David, how do you feel about that answer? Any other questions? Did we cover our bases?
Yeah, no, I think it was very informative. I got a better idea of how to proceed with this, because what I was thinking just it was to trigger the GitHub actions until like to do the build process and all that, and then push the Docker image to e, 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 ECR,
Right.
and then have a code pipeline that triggers a code deploy when a new image get pushed to ECR. That's kind of what I was planning to do.
Looks like you can use this though. Here, for example, you can just use the ECS deploy task definition as well, GitHub action. So that could be another way for you to cycle it.
Okay,
It's not the way we're doing it, but I'm just like, this is what Amazon's prescribed way, presumably, of doing it.
and basically with that, the GitHub action is gonna like push the image directly to the ECS.
Well, you know, I mean, you're still going to do what you're doing now. So your ECR, your GitHub action is still going to push the image to ECR, and then you're going to have another step, and that step is going to call this GitHub action, and it's going to have something like this. So it's going to pass a task definition, and your task definition is what references the Docker image URL and tag. So then this task definition would point to your new image. You'd call this, and it would, you know, trigger the deployment.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into that definitely.
The downside is when you do this, and if you're using Terraform at the same time, you need to tell Terraform now to ignore changes on the task definition, because otherwise you're just going to roll back to whatever was deployed when you deployed the task with Terraform.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. And when you mentioned before that you had a GitHub action that basically copy the code to a different repo, and then you trigger a spacelift, what is spacelift doing in that case exactly? It's changing it's running a Terraform
So
apply?
spacelift wakes up on the push commit and then runs a plan, and then we can confirm that plan if it looks good. It's like
Okay.
Atlantis. The difference between Atlantis and a tool like Spacelift is that Atlantis is chat ops driven. So it cannot act on a push commit to like the main branch and auto apply is my understanding. and in order to actually do the apply, you have to run a command in the GitHub or GitLab UI to do a comment to say, hey, apply this. So with Spacelift, we don't need to do that. And it's, to me, a more continuous, it's more suitable for continuous delivery.
Okay.
I don't want to, oh, sorry to interrupt. I was just gonna say, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I guess one other point to reflect on is moving a existing process to one of these processes, either GitHub Actions or even if it's CodeDeploy, CodeBuild, CodePipeline, et cetera. In one case that I found for CodeBuild and CodePipeline, or rather CodeDeploy, all of them really, is that a team is already using GitHub, they're already using Circle CI, and just to make the switch to using the AWS tools was just a matter of changing the registry that they were publishing to. So if you use that ECR trigger, their Circle CI just pushes to a different registry, and then they've got all the ECR stuff automatically. Nothing on their process changes. It's just like one little configuration change, and they're still operating the same way, but they get the benefit of using, you know, CICD that just gets bolted on to their current process.
Yeah, and this is a very common pattern I've seen. Like, hey, you just do something when the image changes, and something wakes up and redeploys it, whether that's in this case CodePipeline or some Lambda or something. The part I always struggle with, and why we have never once implemented this pattern for Kubernetes or for ECS, where image changes redeploy image, because there's almost always some environment variable or some other IAM role or some other thing changed to the task definition that comes up or is related to this change that needs to be co-deployed with the image as well. So every strategy at Cloud Posse that we implement takes that into account, that we are deploying the surrounding scaffolding of the image and then the image itself at the same time. So those things can go out together.
I can give some insight on this, guys. I've been using this one, the AWS tools actually, primary, because of the client request that they want to use the AWS ecosystem. The nice thing about CodeDeploy is that you can do blue-green, and you can have Lambda checks after deployments to make sure that your system is healthy. And you can have, like different checks with the Lambda function. The way that we did it is that we have two pipelines. The first one is building our image and publishing the ECR or uploading or pushing the image ECR. And then another pipeline will be triggered from ECR image and deploy it like blue-green deployment. I think I agree with all of you that this is like a little bit featureless approach, comparing to GitHub Actions and all the other CI/CD tools. But the nice thing is that it integrates well, it works well with AWS, and you can do some fancy stuff like cross-account deployment, cross-account blue-green deployment with CodeDeploy without the needing of hacking like through the AWS CLI in the scripting bar on your GitHub CICD. So it's depend. If your client requirement to have like blue-green, I think you should or must use CodeDeploy. I'm not sure if any one of you guys do a blue-green deployment without CodeDeploy. I would love to hear.
No, we recently did the same thing with Terraform as well, using CodeDeploy. And the only like disappointment I had there, overall I was very impressed by how well it worked. It made something pretty difficult easy, except for the stupid thing that, to trigger a code deploy is a stateless action, and Terraform doesn't deal with stateless actions. So trying to do this natively in Terraform meant we had to use an escape hatch of local exec to trigger the code deploy. Somebody mentioned, I guess there's some escape hatch using a CloudFormation hack somewhere. I just heard that yesterday. I don't know more about it.
I think my advice to you guys is not including, from my experience, I got into a lot of troubles, that the one that you mentioned, Eric. So keep your pipeline out of Terraform. That's my advice. Keep all of the deployment out of Terraform, I think.
Right. Right. So, well, okay. So in this case, yeah. So what we could do in this case is we could deploy everything, update code deploy. When Terraform completes, then we have a webhook trigger that executes the code deploy action itself. Yeah. Okay. I'll take that. I agree with that. This is so, and in Spacelift, they have the concept of triggers on events like this. So when that apply happens, that could trigger then GitHubActions to actually promote or do the actual blue-green deployment once the infrastructure is up to date with all the changes and staged with the images and things like that. So, okay. Good feedback, Mohammed. Let's see, what else? Any other comments on... Oh no! Well, okay. So we were talking about that. Let's move on to the next question here. Which, forgive me, was that from you, Bart? How to migrate existing configurations to a more modular configuration?
Correct.
Cool. So let me just get Bart code. So yeah, that's a good question, and I don't have a good answer. Not the answer you want. So this is why, like, when we engage customers, we more or less always convince the customer that there is no path that is economical to migrate what you have today online into this modular infrastructure, because the modules define an architecture. And if we were trying to, like, if it was a life or death situation, literally somebody's life was on the line and this was the way we had to do it, okay, we'll try and migrate those things into this state depending on how complicated it is. And we can, the technique is basically this, is that you define the modules with as close to the parameters as you know. You do a manual import using the Terraform import command of the resources. You run a Terraform plan and see like 1,000 things are wrong. And then you go through all those 1,000 things and adjust and import and toggle the feature flags and the settings until it is a minimal change set that you can safely apply without downtime or impact. But we're taking like something that would ordinarily take 5 minutes to do might take 5 days to do, or longer, depending on how complicated it is. So I would consider other things. I would consider instead, how do you think about your infrastructure in versions, maybe? How do you think about, like, maybe what your heritage environment is, where you started, and your next gen environment? Maybe even calling them V1, V2, V3. And thinking about how you can operate with more concurrent environments, so you can keep your heritage environments operating concurrently until you've migrated over to your newer environments. And those can be co-tenanted. They can be in the same VPC, or they can be in different VPCs with peering. When Cloud Posse works with a customer, we almost always start with a net new top-level AWS account organization, and we go from there. So that way we start with an environment that is basically hermetically sealed. From the get-go, we know what goes in there. It's all infrastructure as code. There's no surprises. When you try and move any module configurations into existing open source public Terraform modules, it's just messy. Anyone have something to add to that?
Yeah, I would agree. I would propose using a strangle method and just create a new account and then strangle off pieces of the old infrastructure, old whatever it is, application into the new account, and then just start lopping it off piece by piece. I wouldn't try to take a whole stack and just say, oh, we're going to modularize it, and then just kind of go at it that way.
And then you know what always happened? Like, and this is like, so then, and if it's only you on the team and you don't have enough resources on the team and you take this strategy, you know what happens? Now you got two problems. You never fully, evicted all the services from the old infrastructure. You have half your stuff on the new infrastructure. You love working with the new stuff. You're twice or three times faster than you were in the old stuff. But that remaining stuff that you have in the old infrastructure takes all remaining time out of your day. So you never finish the migration over to the new infrastructure. So like you need to have manager buy-in in your company. This needs to become, top down. They need to be aware of like this as a initiative that you're taking.
I think another important related topic, not right next to, but is the cultural changes. You're going to be introducing new concepts like immutable infrastructure that, are going to be challenges to some people.
I'm wondering, so was there a project where you not created new infrastructure, but imported the one existing?
There is. It's Terraformer by Google.
No. I mean, in Cloud Posse, did you have a project like that?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, yeah.
Are you asking if Eric and his company has had clients like that, or just?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Here, I'll tell you a failure story. It was we're gonna go back to year 2015, I think, or 2016. I had this brilliant idea. I was tired of reinventing the wheel a dozen times. I was gonna start Cloud Posse with this idea. We're gonna create a shared platform everyone can collaborate on. We started down that road writing a lot of Terraform modules, and that's how we started. We got, through a referral, our first customer. They were a perfect venture-backed startup, and they wanted to build new everything, but they wanted to stabilize what they had. And I said, no problem. And I did my back of the napkin math calculations, figured out how much effort it was going to be, and got that executed really quickly. I guess we came in way too low. We get to work and we have this existing environment. It's tons and tons of existing EC2 instances manually configured, and we just go and start trying to come up with the equivalent of that in Terraform with a little bit of hack together Ansible. And this is far before we had anything like Atlantis. It was all CLI-based, console-based stuff. And the first problem we ran into was we'd gotten these instances up. We had a test account we'd set up with VPCs and subnets and all that. It looked a lot like what they had. It all worked fine. We go over to redeploy that in their production account. And yeah, nothing worked. And it's because they had freaking turned off DNS host names in the VPC. I didn't even know that was a thing we could do back then, but yeah, you could. And then we were relying on DNS for services, doing CNAMEs, and we were getting it was this nightmare, and we had to roll back. That was one of the things that we ran into down the road. And I just realized that, hey, there is no way to estimate the scope at a discount or bargain rate when you're moving or forklifting existing stuff. You just got to 10x that off the bat, and then add 50% for unknown unknown things. And that's basically what the project ended up costing, and it was a failure. So with that lesson learned, we don't touch classical configuration management. We don't try and forklift classical infrastructure. We don't touch any of that stuff with a 10-foot pole, because this is a lot.
Especially Chef.
Oh, what was that, Joaquin?
I said especially Chef.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm like anywhere I go, I really believe in the concept of pure function. And so basically, whatever it is, whatever tool you want to do, you have inputs, it has a desired state out of that. And if you want mutations, you do wrappers around it and do your mutations. but that function's the same. It can be tested. So I was at one company, they had these data bags, which is a JSON variables, and they had tracked maybe like well over 30, probably 50 different types of configs, version numbers that are bespoke, tailored to different types of dev QA environments. And I calculated the way they did their functions, and with all these side effects, it would require 900,000 unit tests per chef cook.
Yeah.
So
It's just, yeah, exactly. It's a red flag when you have that much variance in anything.
yeah, I think if you're going to build it ground up, like if it was traditional infrastructure and you had control on the design patterns and to build it a certain way, then fine. But if you have to incorporate some engineer's rocket science project that he went off the Ruby Rails to and Chef or something, you're in trouble.
Yeah. Well, let's see here in the Zoom chat. Were there any questions here? GitHub checks. Okay, so Vladimir posted. Vlad, did you post your example as well to the Slack channel?
I did, yeah.
Cool.
It was there just for discussion purposes. I mean, Brigade is super cool, but it was just relevant to our discussion.
Let's see here. In addition to Terraformer, if you're on GCP now, you can do something like export my project. No way. That's pretty rad. Imagine the day that AWS CLI does that. Never.
Yeah, this was fairly recent. This is just, they just added this like a few months ago.
Wow. That's cool. Let's see here. And
I mean, I've seen some of that generation stuff before, and the biggest problem is that it just generates a giant Terraform module that has all the resources in there, and it's not really usable for anything else.
You're not, it is a shim kind of like. At least you can start addressing it in Terraform now. It's in Terraform state, but this is not. Do not use this as your design pattern. Oh, awesome! I'm just gonna go to the GCP control panel, click ops all this stuff, and run one command, and there, did it, terraformed it. That's not going to be a successful outcome as a pattern.
It's exciting for everyone who's not used it.
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't even used that one. I'm just
just in general code generation.
Yeah,
and then you add that to source control. Who wants to review that? Like, not me. Yeah.
The one valuable thing with Terraformer though that I really like is the code itself is not very it's machine generated, so there's no correlation between one resource and another resource. It is what it is. It's very static. But if there's something that you just can't figure out what the Terraform setting is or what the AWS setting is,
right.
If you do it in the console, like some little proof of concept, and then export that, then you can see like the underlying Terraform. It can be eye-opening to say like, oh my goodness, that's the trigger or the feature that I was using.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I bet it can shave off hours and hours of just prototyping something. And then you have this code that's machine generated. The other thing I would like to say, this is basically like disassembly, right? This is the cloud equivalent of disassembly. And nobody likes coding in a disassembled binary.
It would be interesting to use something like that, not as actual Terraform code that you're going to apply, but to then run it through something like Bridgecrew or TFSec or whatever and create like a cloud security report for your environment, even if you're not using Terraform.
Interesting. I see what you're saying. So there are these tools written around I think it's a stretch, but it's an interesting idea. Like you have this existing infrastructure, it's all ClickOps, but you want to leverage some of these new tools like Bridgecrew, so you could actually just export it as Terraform code and then run Bridgecrew on the Terraform code, and it'll tell you like, this is what you should be doing.
Or if you have compliance requirements, like I need to see a report of, your infrastructure of some kind.
In a perfect world, it would be pretty rad. I doubt that it'll actually work out, but
yeah.
I have all these things like you have, Andrew, like these elegant models and architectures in my head, how it's all going to come together. Oh, I've been bit so many times. So, yeah. Okay. Any other questions here? Let's see, or comments posted here. A quick question is Terraform import similar to Google's Terraformer? Asks Ho Wang. And yeah, it's actually very different. So Terraformer is all about generating the actual IAC, the infrastructure as code, while Terraform import is all about importing existing state resources. Now, I don't know from firsthand experience, and maybe somebody can answer this. Does Terraformer also give you the commands you can run to import the state or help you with the state importation?
Not that I've seen.
So yeah, the fun part is always left up as the exercise to the user.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was it about? Like, does Terraformer generate TF state too? Their GitHub repository says they do. I haven't used it, but
okay. Let's see what it says. State. Oh yeah, and TF state file, so you can import it then. So that's cool. And it's supported up to 0.13 and still accepting PRs and updated recently and stuff. So
back up your state before you do that. I've dealt with Terraform versions with like S3 buckets that had cascading, and if you imported that resource, it broke.
Yeah,
it couldn't do cascading S3, like no security groups. Excuse me, security groups couldn't do cascading security groups. It broke.
The ironic thing is here is that there's nothing to back up because we're not yet in Terraform. So yeah, just run that AWS backup command that they provide to back up all your AWS infrastructure, or not because it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, if you kind of crafted it out what the Terraform code, and you're saying you're going to import that with these type of IDs and all that stuff. Before, I don't know now, Terraform would screw up the import. It couldn't import it correctly. If you had security groups, change security groups, it couldn't resolve it, and it made some really wacky, broken Terraform state.
Yeah, I think I recall experiencing things like that with a Terraform import command if something went wrong. But yeah, that's why we all run. That's why everyone on the call today using Terraform on AWS is using the Cloud Posse TF state backend.
You beat me to it
with version, right?
even if you're not, make sure that you have versioning turned on in your S3 bucket that that you have state in. But this is the easy way to do it.
Yeah, this is one of the ways. There are many ways. So there are a lot of best practices right around the state backends, but versioning, hands down, hard requirement.
Actually, I use one.
Yeah,
I'm a consumer of that module.
Yeah, let me share that in the channel here. Didn't do that. Cloud Posse.
Although I guess this wouldn't help with the other tool that we were talking about since it's Google's Terraformer.
Well, Google's Terraformer works with AWS, I think, right? The Terraformer is not just.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, and Azure, and also Azure.
Interesting.
I've used it exclusively for AWS, and it works great.
Interesting.
And there's another tool, but it hasn't kept up to date. Was Terraforming, which is another one that does this type of process.
I've used that one before.
I think it's written in Ruby or something.
It is. Yeah.
He's never updated it, but what he did it was just amazing.
Yeah. This is one of those things. It's like when you go to do this, your company has tasked you with doing it, and you're like, oh, somebody must have solved this before. It's so obvious that we need this tool, and you go looking for it and you find it. But you only need it one time for that one project, and then the attrition of a tool like this has got to be tremendous.
Yeah, although it's pretty silly to me that something that had like over 4,000 GitHub stars, oh no, he does have. Oh, that's a different one.
Yeah, I already closed the other one.
Yeah.
File.
I don't know how many stars that had, but it had a lot.
Oh, it's also 4K though.
Yeah. That it just like rotted as quickly as it did. Yeah.
Yeah.
They just never updated it.
Yeah, still some hopefuls, but
I use Terraformer to download dashboards and SLO dashboards from Datadog. instead of actually creating them myself. So I will go in Datadog, create everything, put it all in, organized in where I want it. And then I will use Terraformer to actually template out my dashboards. And then from there, I change the variables inside the dashboards after.
Terraformer supports Datadog?
It supports a million things.
No way.
Yes way. Yeah.
Oh.
Secret.
Okay. All right. I'm a little bit more excited about it, that it's not like just these handful of providers.
Oh, look. Cloudflare.
Yeah. Well, and also Cloudflare has their own tool, which is interesting, but
does it do Ops Genie?
No, they're waiting for a pull request from you. What's pretty funny though is like we just talked about this project right now 4 hours ago, unrelated to our call. Somebody asked, is this project dead? So funny. Now, just to clear up, that's terraforming, which is dead, and terraformer is not dead.
The world is synchronized to
Wednesday status updates. Yeah. Exactly. If you want to be heard around the world on Cloud Posse office hours, then announce it.
Hey, Eric, I think managing Datadog dashboards would be a good talk to have. There's a lot of ways to skin that cat. Do you want to create standard graphs and then have people just put together a list of pointers to those graphs, so that everybody's using the same,
agreed.
Stuff. Yeah, how do you backport that stuff?
Well, yeah, I mean the problem with all like Grafana, Datadog, and all these is that the only way as a sane human to develop the dashboards and graphs is in the UI, and then you got to export it as a workflow. But the good thing is for everybody else that wants to piggyback on that, once you have those defined as code, it's really easy to nudge them along and make small changes. So we with Matt Gowie's help, our Datadog module has support for monitors as well as synthetics. We're still waiting on the contribution for dashboards. But the gist of it is it would be the same concept. We can have a library of dashboards for Kubernetes, for ECS, for RDS, and all of that stuff that we would syndicate this way.
Someone needs to do a 4 golden signals of SRE dashboard and contribute.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. The one thing I'm really into as well, one of the things I want to solve at Cloud Posse this year, we do a lot of work with release engineering for customers, and something I see in 0 customers environments is our KPIs on the time it takes to go from, creating the issue to it going in progress, to it going in pending review, to it getting deployed, to it getting closed, and metrics all around that full feedback cycle. And it's complicated because, some are using Jira, some are using Asana, or some, Basecamp or some other system. Some are using GitHub, GitLab. At least for our customers, everyone's basically on Jira, everyone's on GitHub, everyone's on AWS. So I think we can come up with a way of doing it. And I'm prototyping some ideas right now for Cloud Posse.
That's something that would give you like MTTR?
Exactly. MTTR generically from GitHub to deploy. From project management to GitHub to deploy. So seeing those stats across, tying all those things together.
How would you do the metrics? Would you just create an app to do like a kind of?
Yeah. So I've started working. Well, yeah. So and this is the other thing. I was thinking about it and how do we do this in a generic way that we can deliver to customers? And I haven't solved that yet. I know how we're going to deliver it for Cloud Posse.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, what's your data store? How are you doing your reporting and your analytics and things like that? And it doesn't make sense that we spin up a Redshift cluster just to do this thing and do that. But for Cloud Posse, what we use is we have a data warehouse on Aurora. We use Metabase as our UI. And then and this is just something I'm prototyping right now. So I've written collectors to receive all the webhook events. So now what we can do is we get all the webhook events from Jira, we get all the webhook events from GitHub, we get all the webhook events from GitHubActions and what they're running and doing. And then we have the raw data now in our data warehouse, so now we can report on it with some very, very creative SQL.
Well, I was thinking like kind of like two ways, two approaches. One is like an exporter for Prometheus. And so that way you could have a kind of a standard interface, and then that will work across for anywhere.
No, it's true. Now you got to go deploy Prometheus, right? Or it's one of these standard things.
Use the AWS hosted version.
Or another one is the beats. Just do like a Cloud Posse beat or something, and then that you'd have a YAML file that basically configures, all those CI options or whatever, plug them in, and then it just collects.
Yeah. Or wait, what's beats?
So what happens is Elasticsearch has these Go library called the Beats lib, and they're just basically like data shippers. And so you'll have like a little YAML file that configure where it gets its stuff, and then it just starts shipping the data. And
that's cool. Yeah. No, that's kind of the model I'm thinking of.
And they're small, good. It's a tiny, small Go app. So that's what's also nice.
Very cool.
It's small. It's simple. I actually managed to do like an ELK stack without the log stash, and Elasticsearch added a little bit of this ingest pipeline so that I could transform the data and then panel it up. And I just use Filebeats to collect, for example, scrape Docker logs and just
gotcha. Yeah,
Elasticsearch.
The way I'm thinking about it is similar to the way you're thinking about it. Is like there's an awesome company called Stitch Data, and Stitch Data aggregates data from like 100+ different sources, and it sends it to any targets that you want. Then Stitch Data has the concept of like taps under an organization called Singer. And they got 164 taps. And these present the data in a portable ETL format that lets you then load that into any number of target destinations. So I'm kind of thinking this is kind of like the mental model or framework. So these taps are like what you're talking about are these beats. But I mean, do they have more beats? Am I looking in the wrong place? Because this is like small, like I don't see it. I would like to see beats from more.
Oh no, there's a whole community of beats. I mean, people are going like crazy town, and that's just happen. You build a simple platform of ins and outs, and it's simple, and people just go crazy town on making extensions and whatnot.
Can you share like, is there any registry or like community?
Search for like community beats. And they probably put a list there. And there's also other stuff that's like not on the list that they didn't track. Like I think I found like a SNMP beat and things like that. So a beat.
That's cool. That's really smart that they're doing this, creating an ecosystem of ingesters, basically, or exporters, as you call them.
Yeah, and then the Prometheus, what I looked at is, for example, you have Kubernetes, you have the Kubemetrics exporter.
Yeah.
So it turns into like a server that Prometheus could scrape. And there's another one I was looking at for network equipment, which is an SNMP exporter. So you can put all your MIBs there and scan your traffic, and then Prometheus could scrape it.
But so the gist of it is that unfortunately the solution is the generic solution. There is no generic. There's the generic solution conceptually, as in strategies or patterns and solutions. But unfortunately, no way that we can actually do it in a way that, hey, everyone who's going to use like Datadog, they have their way. Those who want to use Prometheus use their way. Those that have neither of those but use some other finagled thing in Elastic have their way. So
the thing is like these things are generic. So for example, I could use like a file beat, and I could just plug that thing into Loki.
Mm-hmm.
And then boom, so a lot of these things are interchangeable. They may not look like it, but they're actually interchangeable. You don't have to use the rest of the stack. Of course, Elasticsearch would like that and take your money. But also the just idea that you're thinking about, I think actually you can make a company and seed funding around that whole idea. I mean, I think it's that big. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's really a needed solution, and it's the one side of the dev biz ops type thing that's just not, that's needed.
Yeah.
We need to kind of liberate the agile from marketing, and this could do that.
Eric, this is like my life. So I'm delighted that you're kind of getting to this topic finally. By the way, I've got a ton of research. I'm happy to send in your direction.
Yeah. Well, let's table. This is cool. This is really interesting for me. I want to talk more about this. Metrics in business, metrics in DevOps, metrics in release engineering, how we tie it all together. So let's make a point of talking about that next week. We're out of time for today. I want to try and respect everyone's schedule for the hour session. So this is cool. We touched on something new. So with that said, everyone, thank you so much for sharing, helping everyone answer the questions and share your experiences. If you haven't already, head over to youtube.com/c/cloudposse and subscribe to our channel so you get the updates of our latest sessions. Also, Andy on our team is slicing up these office hours segments into bite-sized pieces that talk about one topic. So if you don't have the full hour, we have a lot of great segments there where you can just listen to 5-10 minute explanation on some topic. We call those Cloud Posse Explains. All right. Well, if you haven't already, head over to slack.cloudposse.com and subscribe and join our Slack team. Very vibrant community, about 3,600 people. And we have our podcast as well. We syndicate every one of these segments to our podcast. You can listen to in the car or on the train at podcast.cloudposse.com. Lastly, if you want to work with Cloud Posse, don't forget to take our quiz. Head over to cloudposse.com/quiz and look forward to talking with you personally. Take care.